Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. Our next guest, Republican strategist Matt Mackowiak here on the Chad Hasty Show. Matt, good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Chad. Good morning.
Well, we've got the New Hampshire primary tonight. What are you going to be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. I mean, first, the strong expectation is Bernie Sanders is going to win New Hampshire. Of course, he won it 4 years ago, and the field is more fractured now than it was then. He really only had one competitor 4 years ago. So presuming he wins, what does that margin look like? And is he in the high 20s or is he more in the mid-30s, which might show his ceiling rising? I think that'll be one thing to watch. I think the second thing to watch, obviously everybody's focused on Biden, who seems to be sort of dying a slow death politically. He could be in fourth or fifth tonight, which, he'll probably continue because he thinks he can keep his South Carolina firewall. But, boy, I think his whole kind of support base and his endorsements are going to scurry, I think, quickly. Yeah. So I think that's another thing to watch. And I think third is, do Pete Buttigieg or Amy Klobuchar surprise? Do either of them, does Pete get, finish close to Bernie? Does Klobuchar surprise by maybe finishing third ahead of Warren, perhaps even second? There's been some anecdotal evidence that she's surging at the end here in New Hampshire and even in a couple of the polls, but she really hasn't been above third or even fourth, which is better than where she was a week ago. But her that strong debate on Friday, I think, has given her some new momentum. But we'll see how high she can rise. So, yeah, look, I don't think New Hampshire is going to decide anything, but it may narrow the field. It's going to give Bernie more momentum. We're going to see who if anyone rises to the level where they can really challenge Bernie going forward, and it may be effectively the end of the Biden campaign, whether he admits it or not.
Well, and no matter what, the race changes after tonight because Bloomberg is now a factor. After these first two states, Bloomberg is challenging for Super Tuesday. And Matt, I saw a poll yesterday where Bloomberg is running right around fourth place in some of these national polls.
Yeah, that's right. I want to say he was even third. Maybe it was fourth, but
you might be right at third. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. And look, now Bloomberg is not on the ballot in Nevada in the caucuses, which come next, and not in South Carolina. So he's not in the first four states. But he is definitely going to be a factor, and he is sort of a stalking horse. It reminds me of the NFL playoffs. You can, or even in sort of college basketball, March Madness, where you can kind of get a bye. I mean, Bloomberg has effectively bought a bye to Super Tuesday. No other candidate could possibly skip the first four states and still be a legit, factor to be the nominee. But he is in that position, and as crazy as his bid appeared at the very beginning, it sure looks like the things he needed to happen are happening. Bernie is strong, Biden is weak. No one is really becoming the Stop Bernie candidate, and he's sitting there with $300 million spent waiting for Super Tuesday, where he's going to get a third, maybe a fourth of the delegates, perhaps more than that, and be in a strong position. So. Yeah, I mean, I think New Hampshire is going to matter. I don't think it's going to decide anything, but I think we're going to have a much clearer picture of who the maybe final three candidates are going to be.
If you're the Democrat Party, and I think it's no secret that the Democrat Party is scared to death of Bernie Sanders becoming their nominee, if you're the party establishment, are you hoping and praying that somehow, some way, everyone who's in the race right now, as far as Elizabeth Warren goes, Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, Mike Bloomberg, are you just hoping and praying that they can find a way to stay in this thing and keep pulling delegates away from Bernie Sanders? Because, there was a poll from, I think it was 538, that it basically said Bernie, after you get past this, Bernie has pretty much clear sailing through all the rest of these states right now.
Yeah, I mean, he could certainly do well in Nevada. We don't know what's happening in South Carolina. If the black vote leaves Biden, where does it go? It's not going to go to Pete. Where does it go? Does it go to Warren, perhaps? Does it go to Sanders, perhaps? I don't know. I mean, Sanders had a huge problem 4 years ago performing with African-American voters. It was a big reason why he ended up, falling short of defeating Hillary. So, these are the big questions going forward. But to your question about everyone staying in, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case, because it reminds me a little bit of the Republican primary 4 years ago. If the anti-Trump sort of vote had coalesced earlier behind Cruz or whoever, they may have been able to stop him. And in this case, I think that's even more true since the delegates are allocated proportionally. Bernie's never going to build up a massive delegate lead because he's never going to get 60% anywhere. He's going to get maybe 50 in some places, but really 30 and 40% in different states. So they really, if they're going to stop Bernie, they've got to get behind someone, and that's what Bloomberg is counting on. He's counting on everyone else being so weak that they can't stop Bernie, and the party sort of freaks out and ultimately gets behind him.
Very interesting. Taking a look here in the state of Texas, there is that Democrat Senate race that's going on, a primary, and I thought you had a funny comment on the Dallas Morning News endorsing two candidates in that race. Matt, there's no spark, there's nothing coming out of that Senate race. Have you been surprised by that?
I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest. I pay close attention to this stuff. The Democratic Senate primary, to me, I've had real trouble even pretending to care about it. Just from the perspective of, you've got 4 or 5 second, maybe third-tier candidates running statewide races. They're raising money like congressional candidates, not like U.S. Senate candidates. Even M.J. Hager, who the Democratic Party establishment has sort of rallied behind, isn't really, running all that strong. She's probably going to be in the runoff, but I could easily see her losing the primary runoff, depending on who she gets in there with. So, Dallas Morning News endorsing two people, the New York Times did that with Klobuchar and Warren, makes no sense here. Really. They just are, I guess, they don't want to have to choose.
Maybe they should have been like just what you said. We don't care. Dallas Morning News, it doesn't matter. You don't care. We don't care. It's this race.
I'll tell you, but I will say this, Chad. I mean, look, there is one person that does care and that is enjoying this, and that's John Cornyn.
Yes.
And the reason for that is, he's got $12 million in the bank right now. He's continuing to raise money. I'm going to the fundraiser for him a week from Friday here in Austin, and he's going to be at $15 or $18 million in the bank by the time the Democrats have their nominee. That person's going to be totally out of money and is going to turn around and raise, $5 or $10 million in 3 or 4 months to even have a chance to be credible, not a chance to win. I don't believe the Democrat for Senate has a chance to win this cycle, given the dynamics that we know about. So, yeah, this Senate race on the Democratic side has been really quite a circus, and it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon.
Matt, tell folks about your podcast and also how they can sign up for your morning newsletter.
Yeah, the podcast is called Mac on Politics. It's available on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. Most recent guest is Peter Hasson, who did has a new book out called The Manipulators. He looks into how big tech is silencing conservatives. Did a lot of research on it. Very, very interesting conversation if you're curious about shadow banning and search and deplatforming, all these kinds of things. The newsletter, which I know you're a subscriber to, more than 3,000 Texans receive every morning, weekday morning, is called Must Read Texas. We take all the top news, put it in one clean, easy-to-read email, and deliver by 9 a.m. You can sign up for a free 1-week trial at mustreadtexas.com.
All right, very nice. Matt, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Take care.
That's Matt Mackowiak here on the Chad Hasty Show. News Talk KFYO.